Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Small Business Marketing Q&A show special interview with Kelly Way from the Law Office of Kelly Way. Thank you so much for being here. Today, we are talking about copyright laws and how it affects us when we're creating our content. So, Kelly, tell us a little bit about fair use.
So most of the time when people are taking content off the internet, they're relying on fair use because, frankly, getting permission, while it's the gold standard, it can be pretty tough to track them down and actually get that sure go ahead. So fair use is the fallback that a lot of people use, but a lot of people don't really understand it or how it works. So I just figured I'd kind of go over the general guidelines. Yeah, and then we would talk a bit more on specifics. So the idea of fair use is just that there are certain uses of copyrighted material that serve a public benefit. And this benefit is important enough that they're not going to hold you liable for infringement, even though what you've done technically meets the requirements of it. The idea being the public benefit outweighs the harm that was done to the copyright owner by you using their work without permission. And so that's basically the idea behind fair use. And so the way that it works, there's all kinds of rumors like, oh, as long as you only use less than 10% or less than 4 lines of the lyrics of a song or, whatever, that then it's okay. And unfortunately, that's not actually a rule. That's more like a guideline. So the way that it works is the courts have said, we decide this on a case-by-case basis. So while that might generally be true, it's not a guarantee. Or if you want to think about it another way, the only way you know absolutely for sure that you have a fair use defense is after you won the lawsuit.
That's funny.
But even with that said, they do have a test that the courts use. And so I just figured I'd go through, it's a 4-part test. There's 4 things that they look at. And so just going through them all, the first one is basically, what was the purpose? What was the alleged infringer actually doing with the work? And so something like commercial use, where you're trying to make money off of the copyrighted work, that's going to weigh against it being fair use. Whereas things like education or commentary, criticism, parody is a great example of something they consider a good public benefit. We Americans like to have a right to make fun of people. So those kinds of things, they're not guaranteed fair use, but they weigh in favor of it. So that's kind of what they look at when they're looking at the purpose is, why are you using it? What purpose does it serve? The next thing that they look at is, what is the copyrighted work itself? Just because copyright is meant to protect creative expression. So the more creative it is, the more protection it gets. So like we're talking books, a nonfiction, like an autobiography, that's not going to get as much protection as, say, a work of pure fiction. So they look at that. And then the third thing they look at is how much was taken. And that's where the 10-second rule, or the 4 lines, that's where that comes in. Because they look at how much was taken in terms of quantity. So, the less that was taken as a general rule, the more it's going to weigh in favor of fair use. But they also look in terms of quality, like how important was the thing that you take? With an example being, the big case on this was the autobiography of Gerald Ford, and the piece that was taken without permission was the entire section on the pardoning of former President Nixon. Which is basically the entire selling point of the book. If you're going to buy it, that's what you're going to buy it for. So while percentage-wise it wasn't a big part of the book, the court called it the heart of the work. So that weighed against fair use in that particular case.
Wow, that's so interesting.
Yeah. So they look at it in terms of quality and quantity. So that's something to think about. And then the last thing that they look at is basically, what was the harm to the owner in terms of economics? So looking at the copyright owner's bottom line, has your use impacted them, and has it hurt the profits that they were making off of the work?
I see. And I would guess that that's where people really go after you in court, is if you are taking money from them.
Frankly, infringement these days, it's so rampant that a lot of copyright owners just pretty much have to pick and choose their battles. So yeah, probably not going to take issue with, you know, like a little bit over here, a little bit over there, especially if they have a lot of people that are doing that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, if you're making money off of it, that's when they're really going to object. For example, J.K. Rowling, you know, the author of the Harry Potter series,
Mm-hmm.
somebody came up with an entire website that's, you know, like the encyclopedia of Harry Potter. And J.K. Rowling actually had no issue with that. She even admits she used the site herself when she wanted to refresh her memory on something. But then when they went to actually print a book, or, you know, could convert that website into a book that they could sell, that was when she objected to it. And that's when she told them, no, you know, I'm cool with the website, but you can't do the book.
Wow. Very cool. So would you mind if I ask you a couple questions that our audience submitted?
Sure.
Excellent. So the first one is, when it comes to reposting memes and other images that you see on the internet, are there strict rules there?
So going back to that fair use test, again, it's no hard rules. They're always going to be case by case, but just got to go through those fair use factors as far as how much are you taking and is it going to harm them. A lot of times it's less about, you know, all four factors and more about, are they going to care?
Right.
Just a lot of times it's just a risk analysis. So look at those four things and look at how likely it is that they're going to be offended and will come after you because they don't like what it is that you're doing. Okay.
The next question is, we often see videos that have short clips of movies or TV shows inside them. Do you have to get permission for that, or does that fall under that, like under 10 seconds kind of thing?
Yeah, so that's again going back to the broad rules of thumb, where it's when it's a tiny snippet of a much larger work, it's probably going to be less objectionable. It's probably going to be considered fair use, but again, it's not a hard rule, it's just a guideline. So, you know, for example, Friends is so popular, I'm sure that there are plenty of people that do all these short little clips out of Friends, and I would suspect that they probably wouldn't have an issue with it as long as it's just a little bit here and there where it doesn't cut into any of the money that they're making out of the Friends franchise.
Got it. That makes perfect sense. The next question is, can we use search engine images for presentations that we're building?
Search engine images, now those are potentially problematic because a lot of photographers, pictures are so easy to copy. I know a lot of photographers that are very frustrated that they're trying to make money off of their pictures and people just keep copying them everywhere. So I would say you don't want to just run a search and use the first picture that shows up, because you want to actually check to see whether or not they've actually given permission for that copying. But what you can do is there are websites like creativecommons.org where people have actually labeled their pictures as anyone can use it for anything. There's also places like Pixabay, a lot of places like Pixabay, where again, the owner has given permission to freely use without having to pay anybody for it.
Great.
And the other tip that you could use is the places like Google, for example, actually has filters in its search engine, I think under the Tools tab, where you can actually filter for content that has been tagged as okay for reuse.
That's pretty cool. I did not know that myself.
Yeah.
Yeah, learn something new every day. I've always, definitely stayed on the safe side. I always license stock imagery. But sometimes, honestly, you find a picture out there that would be perfect. And if you can't get it, through one of the sites for the stock images, it's hard to find.
Yeah. So just put a little bit more effort there and do some due diligence just to make sure it's something that has been labeled as okay for reuse.
Okay. And the last question here is, when is it okay to add popular songs to your content? So this could be videos or just anything that you're making. I know that when I tried to upload a video, I was at an event, covering an event, and when I tried to upload the video, which was me talking and inviting people to the event, but there was background music, and Facebook flagged me and said, you can't post this without permission. So how do we? Yeah. So how does that work?
It goes back to the fair use thing again. There's no hard rules about how much is okay or not okay. There's just, again, the less that you use, the less likely it is that they're going to have an objection. Music is not as bad as photos, but it's pretty close in terms of a lot of people take it without permission. So the various music rights holders are really trying to crack down on that as best as they can. So I'd say it's probably better if it's possible to get permission. If it's not possible, then you got to go through those 4 factors that I outlined and ask yourself, if I were the person that owned the copyright to this, would I go after me? Would I have an objection, and would I feel like I needed to stomp this out?
That's a great way to look at it, definitely. And is there anything else that you think my audience should know about copyright?
Let's see. I think there might be places where you can get a license for songs, same as, like I said, with the Creative Commons. So you can look around to see about songs that have been licensed, or that you can maybe pay a small fee or a subscription service to do that sort of thing. So look into that. Those are the big things on fair use. And so I'm not thinking of anything to add to that, although if you have other questions or other copyright related topics, I'm happy to talk about those as well.
Sure. You're always such a strong resource for great facts and stuff like that. So, even knowing that you could search on Google and filter out ones that are, more easily usable. So I think that's all great. Yeah, I think that's all of our questions for today. But if we think of anything else, we can easily share in this post. And viewers, if you think of anything else, please comment below, and Kelly will be happy to answer your questions.
Absolutely. I do have a blog on my website as well where I'll answer copyright questions. And so you're welcome to check out my website, look at my blog, or sign up for my newsletter where I give out tips. I just send it out once a month. So yeah, happy to help out wherever I can.
Yeah, and I can say I love her newsletter. It always has so many fun facts in there. And as a data nerd like I am, I'm always brought right into it, sucked right in. But we will make sure that we include your website and your blog and everything in this post so that you guys can go check her out too. Thank you so much for your time today.
Absolutely.
I'm so grateful that you are able to answer those questions, and hopefully we'll have you on again soon.
All right, I look forward to it. Thanks, Rebecca.
Have a good day.
You too.